Why are most of the pickleball players you know not getting better? They're playing a lot, they're trying hard, they have the best gear, but they just seem to stay at the same level. Well, one thing is for sure, it's not because they've reached their potential as players. It's because they're failing to do one of the essential things that I'm about to show you. In this video, I'll show you how to get better the fast way, explain why it works, and walk you through the 5-step system that anybody can incorporate into their game to reach their potential with no wasted time. But first, what's the slow way? When I first started, I was getting better the slow way. I ordered some paddles from Costco, went to the local open play, put my paddles in the paddle rack, and just started mixing in with anybody who'd let me play with them. Over time, I started to get to know a group of regular players that I'd play with a lot. And since I just started, I got pretty decent, pretty fast, and started beating a lot of those players. And in another world, I would have been totally happy just hanging out with that group of players and continuing to play with them only. But I decided I wanted to see how far I could take my pickleball playing ability. And from my experience playing competitive tennis, I knew that I just wasn't going to get very good playing with the same group of players. I would fail my goal of getting better because I wouldn't be getting challenged enough, which would hold me back from reaching my potential. And this is an artificial ceiling that a lot of players put on their game. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with choosing friendship and socializing over maximizing your growth. It just isn't the fast way to get better. And that's what this video is about. Let me show you how it's done. I used to get really anxious playing against rec players that were better than me. I felt like I needed to prove that I was good and I belonged on the court. And to do that, I tried to hit the ball in, yes, but what I really thought I needed to do was hit flashy, cool shots, because those are the shots that were getting praised. But that was exactly the wrong approach. What I needed to focus on was the fundamentals. The reason that I was so out of place on these courts wasn't because I couldn't hit an ATP or an Ernie or some kind of crazy speed up. It was because I wasn't getting into the kitchen frequently enough, and I wasn't hitting enough dinks consistently. No amount of flashy shots would change that fact. In retrospect, that was so obvious, but it really wasn't to me at the time. And I still see it all the time. When I play with lower level players, they feel like they need to go for more and prove something, when really they should just be working on the fundamentals. So what are the fundamentals that you do need? There are 2 abilities that you must develop ASAP. The first is getting to the kitchen, and the second is being able to dink at the kitchen consistently. And at the lower levels, one is a lot more important than the other. Can you guess which one?
Getting to the net some way, somehow, safely. That could mean having a good third shot drop. It could be having a good mid-court. It could be having a good drive, then a drop. There's a lot of techniques to get you to the net safely, but you're really not going to win many points unless you're at the net a lot.
As Ben says, it's getting to the kitchen, because if you can't even get to the kitchen, you're not even going to have an opportunity to hit a dink. Knowing that these 2 abilities and only these 2 abilities should be your focus puts you ahead of 99% of players on the road to 5-0. Once I decided that I did want to get better, I started to drill a lot. I searched for drills on YouTube and I found a few videos that were great, and the one that I really followed was Johnson Colas, whose channel is awesome, by the way. In his video, he works on everything from
straight ahead dinking across court, hand speed volleys, point-based stuff.
Literally everything. This approach was much better than what I was doing before, which was just pulling up to the park and playing rec games. I've come to realize that this isn't the fast way either. It's a faster way for sure, but not the fast way. The problem with drilling everything is that it lacks focus. And study after study shows that we perform a lot better when we have a singular focus.
Multitasking was really popular in the 1990s, and employers wanted people who were good at multitasking because it seemed more efficient to be able to do multiple things at once. Because theoretically, you can get more done in the same amount of time. The problem is, as researchers found out, brains actually can't focus on multiple things at once.
So when you step on court, you're going to be best off focusing on one ability achieved by improving one shot that you're leveling up with one adjustment. Now, you'll sometimes come short of narrowing things down that specifically. When you feel like you don't really know what you should be focusing on, ask yourself, what's the one ability that I need to improve the most? Then direct your practice towards the answer you come up with. For most players, it's going to be getting to the kitchen by hitting consistent and unattackable thirds. And most likely on those thirds, you're going to be making adjustments to either make them more consistent or arcing lower over the net so they're less attackable. Ask yourself those questions and you'll figure it out. Now, to even get to the point where you're able to focus on investing on the single most important thing for you to progress as a player, you're gonna have to do something that sounds a little bit crazy. One of the reasons I was able to develop as quickly as I did as a pickleball player is because I did this thing a long time ago. When I was in high school, I was the best tennis player in our school, and it wasn't really even close. Everybody thought I was amazing at tennis, and I really liked that I was known for being a great athlete. But when it would come time for the state championship, I would get crushed. And that really disoriented me because I went from feeling like my identity was a great tennis player and a great athlete, and getting crushed at tennis made me question the validity of that identity. This was tough for me to handle, so I started to withdraw a little bit from the sport. I didn't really get that much better at tennis from the middle of high school through the end of college. I started to avoid situations where I felt like my identity as a winning, great player could be threatened. And that really stunted my development. It's something that I think about to this day. But later on, I learned about this concept called growth mindset by a researcher named Carol Dweck.
So the first key takeaway in the book is about the difference between the two mindsets that she calls the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. The fixed mindset is the idea that all of the abilities that we have, things like our intelligence, things like our ability to solve problems, these are all fundamentally innate, and there's not a lot that we can do to change them. Whereas the growth mindset is more of a mindset that everything is a skill, everything can be learned, everything can be improved over time, whether that's our ability to solve problems, or ability to public speak, or ability to do whatever.
Studies by Dweck and colleagues found that for students with a growth mindset, they had a 3 times more likely chance to score in the top 20% of achievement tests, underscoring the powerful impact of believing that you can do better. When it comes to pickleball, I think most players, after they've played for a little bit of time, maybe after a year or maybe 2 years of playing, they settle into a fixed mindset. They're not getting better for free anymore, and then they feel like the player that they are is just the player that they will always be, and that's it. And they shy away from scenarios which will challenge the identity that they've developed. But the players that get better constantly are seeking out new challenges so that they can learn and improve. So ask yourself if you're constantly being challenged as a player, or if you're mostly playing in the comfort of an environment that doesn't threaten your identity as a player. Play with the best players you can find, right? Not quite. There were a couple players at my local park who are now signed MLP pros who I would try to play with as much as I possibly could. Every now and then, they'd be nice enough to let me join in a game, and I'd get smoked. Even though it was really challenging for me to play in those games because I didn't really have the fundamentals down, playing games with them was a fake challenge. They weren't playing that the way that they would play in games, and they were probably targeting my partner, who was a higher level player, so they'd be able to hit more balls. Because when they hit to me, I would make errors. You'll get better playing with players that are way out of your league, but it's not the fast way. The fast way is to play with players that are in a Goldilocks zone of your level. Players that are around your level, maybe a little bit better than you, but not too much. If it's too much, you can't rise to the challenge no matter how well you play that day. Finding that Goldilocks area is called the zone of proximal development. And it's a theory that says that you develop the most when you're being challenged, but not too much.
First, there is what we can do on our own. Then, there is the zone of proximal development, which represents what we can do with the help of an adult, a friend, technology, or what Vygotsky called the more knowledgeable other. Last, there is what's beyond our reach.
So if you're feeling stuck, you're probably not being challenged. So the best thing for you to do is find players that are in that zone of ability in your area and try to play the most with them. Of course, seek out players to play with people that are even more advanced than you. Find where the edge of your zone is. For most of you, playing with Ben Johns and Anna Lee is a waste of your time, including me. How do you even find players that are in that Goldilocks zone? I live in Southern California, so I'm privileged. There are a lot of players in that 4.0 to 5.5 range. But maybe you live somewhere in the Midwest or somewhere where pickleball is just not as big yet. This is actually a question that I get fairly often. And one of the best ways to do that is to go play tournaments. Because when you go to tournaments, there's going to be a collection of people all sorted by ability level, and they're all trying their hardest. So when you play a match that feels good, then whether you win or lose, if you feel like there's a good vibe match, if you get along with this person, try to befriend them and see if there are opportunities for you guys to meet up and drill. Really, all you need to get better is one player that's around your level, that's committed to getting better, and you can get really good. But what tends to happen is you make a friend, they have their own friends, you start setting up games. As you set up games and play more, you meet more people and your network expands. The hardest thing is just getting started. And there's another reason to play tournaments as well, which is to get practice playing tournaments. I mentioned earlier in the video, getting to the kitchen is the single most important ability for players on their way to 5.0. And it turns out there are 9 simple rules that the pros use to get to the kitchen every time. Follow those rules and you'll find yourself at the kitchen way more often than you're used to. I break down all of those rules and how you can incorporate them into your game in this video here. Watch that next.